Good evening, children. Today our topic is Darwinism. Here, Darwinism is an evolutionary theory proposed by Charles Robert Darwin, and he is actually English naturalist. Only write down this point in introduction. And next point is write down this point only here. Darwin published his theory in his book known as The Origin of a Species by means of the natural selection. Okay. Now, how his theory is explained by the natural selection. Darwin's theory of natural selection does not explain what exactly evolution, but explains how evolutionary might have occurred in nature. So Darwin consists of 6 principles. They are the following. Number 1 is overproduction. Number 2, constancy in population. Number 3, struggle for existence. Number 4, variations. Number 5, natural selection. And last one is the origin of new species. With these 6 principles, he explained origin of a species by the natural selection. Let us know one by one. Number 1 is the overproduction. In evolution or in nature, every organism tends to increase its population in large proportions. For example, paramecium divides by binary fission at the rate of 3 to 4 times a day. And second one is salmon fish produces 28 million eggs and starfish 1 million eggs in a season. If they produce like this, whole earth are filled by only these 3 species. That's why overproduction of the species is again how it is controlled. It is explained by in next step. There's a constancy in population. How the population is maintained constantly in the environment. However, such an abnormal increase is not noticed in the population of any species. Okay, if the organisms produce like this, they increase the population abnormally, so it is controlled in nature. How it is processed here? What happens if any species in nature as offsprings die in large number before reaching the reproductive age? That's why the offsprings are dying before reaching their adult stages, so the population are maintained constantly. The few offsprings are developing as adults and the rest of the offsprings are dying. That's why the population in the environment is maintaining constantly. And the next one is a struggle for existence. As the rate of reproduction is high, animals increase the geometrical rate, but there is no corresponding increase in space. Food and other factors are essential for life. This leads the competition for getting requirements of life. The competition is called as a struggle for existence. There are 3 types of struggles. Okay, if the factors the food and other factors are essential to the organisms to survive in their life. So here for these factors the struggle is going between the species. So here there are 3 types of a struggle for existence. 3 types are there. Number 1 is intraspecific struggle. Okay, this one, the competition found among the species is called as a intraspecific struggle. So here it is a competition for food, maybe shelter, or for reproduction. It is the most severe check on the rate of reproduction. Example, struggle between 2 male dates. So for the reproduction. Okay. Now next one is a interspecific struggle. Here the competition found among the animals of different species. Here the competition occur in the species just between the same species. If it occurs in the different species, then it is known as a interspecific struggle. Okay. Next, most of the species have the same type of food habits. Hence, this competition exists among them chiefly for food or shelter. Okay. Example, you can write struggle between the ostrich and lion. Any animals you can write here. For struggle, 1 factor. For food or for shelter. Okay. Next one, struggle with the environment. All living organisms struggle with the adverse environmental conditions such as cyclones, floods, earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanic eruptions. So like this, with these factors, they have to struggle for the environment, struggle for the place also. Okay. Now variations here. No 2 organisms are exactly similar. They show variations. Even the offsprings of the same parents are different. So these variations may be sometimes harmful, sometimes useful, or sometimes neutral also. So the useful variations helps the organisms to overcome the struggle. If any variations are occur in the organisms, that variations are help to the organisms to overcome the struggle for the existence. Such variations are passed on to the next generations. Variations mean a new changes occurs in the organisms. Okay. Next one is the natural selection. Here, according to Darwinism, the individual possesses harmful variations are reproductively less successful. Okay. Thus, organisms with beneficial variations would increase the ability to reproduce and leave more fertile offspring. Here, the variations are two types: harmful and beneficial variations. Here, harmful variations are reproductively less successful, and whereas the beneficial variations would increase the ability to survive the organisms and also to produce the fertile offsprings. They are said to be fittest organisms. Those organisms are with the beneficial variations. That organisms are fit to survive in their environment, and they only can survive. See here. The organisms with a less reproductive success are not represented in future generations. However, fit they may be in the struggle for existence. This is known as a natural selection. And Herbert, the scientist, called this phenomena survival of the fittest. Okay. Next, the sixth one is the origin of species. Here Darwin concluded that the struggle for existence resulting in the survival of the fittest allows success generations to become better adapted to the environment. Those organisms struggled for the existence in the environment, they can survive, they can fit, and allows the next generations to become better adapted to the environment. So all these variations selected by nature are accumulated from generation to the generation. Such accumulation or variations over a long period of time brings so many changes in the organisms. If any variation, any changes occurs in the one organism, if that changes are transferred from generation to generation, what happens here? We can see a new character or new changes in the organism. So here that what here explaining here, such an accumulation over a long period of time brings so many changes in an organism that it is not interbred anymore with the original parent species. Such reproductively isolated organisms is considered as a new species. Here what happens, the species are differentiated by one character known as a reproductive character. So due to the geographical barriers, due to the mountains, due to the valleys, what happens here, the organisms present in one place and same species are present in the another place, but due to the geographical barrier like large mountains, this same species cannot reproduce with the same species present in the next place. So here the origin, so what happens here, the species present in this area reproduces themselves, and here the species present in this place reproduce themselves. What happens, the variation is developed between these two same species. That means the same species are differentiated, are separated by the reproduction. Such like this, due to the reproductive character from this species, a new species are originated. Okay. This is the principles. 6 principles are present in the Darwinism. And now what is the criticism of Darwinism? Okay, here some biologists are favored to the Darwinism theory, but some objects are also raised against Darwinism theory. So what are the criticism points here? Number 1, Darwin stated that all variations are inherited, but he did not distinguish between heritable and non-heritable variations. Which variations are transferring from generation to generation, which are not transferring, he didn't explain. So thus Darwin faced the criticism. Darwinism explains the survival of the fittest but not the arrival of the fittest. And second one, he did not explain the origin of new characters. He explained only the progressive improvement of the existing organs. So here one example, good example, giraffe is increased their neck to survive in their environment. So because of that, their new already the neck is present, but the neck is elongated. That means improvement of the existing organs is present, but he didn't explain the new characters arrived or developed in the organism. That is the one criticism. And next one, he didn't explain occurrence of the vestigial organs. Here some vestigial organs are present in the organisms, like tail in the man, like this. Here how these vestigial organs are developed, what its occurrence, he didn't explain about the vestigial organs. And next one, last one, Darwin did not consider the importance of the macro variations and considered them as spots of nature. He is the macro variation, again same example we can take, that means the long neck in giraffe, this is a variation, but he didn't consider it as a macro variation, but he considered, just he said that just it is a minor variation in the nature. Okay, like this, some criticism points are there in the Darwinism. And the next, let us say, what is the neo-Darwinism? Here it is also known as a modern synthetic theory of evolution. Here neo-Darwinism is a modern theory of natural selection. The scientists such as Huxley, Haeckel, Simpson, etc. supported the Darwinism, but later future civil rights may explain the natural selection in the light of the post-Darwin discourse. After Darwin discovered, these scientists also discovered the theory, origin of species by natural selection. According to this theory, 5 basic factors are involved in the process of the organic evolution. They are gene mutations, chromosomal mutations, third one is the genetic recombinations, and the fourth one is the natural selection, last fifth one is the reproductive selection, isolation. That is, what is a gene mutation? Here, same, the changes in the structure of a gene are called as a gene mutations, and they alter the phenotypic characters of the individuals. Thus, the gene mutations tend to produce variations in the offspring. Here, when the changes occurs in the genes that affect the changes in the structure of the organism. See here, one example I want to give here. Yes, black color of the eye is under control of the one gene. If the gene structure changes, here that affects on the color of the eye also. That means black color of the eye also changes. That he is explaining here. Changes in the structure of the gene are called mutation, gene mutation. They alter the phenotypic characters of the individuals also. Okay. Next one, same, chromosomal mutations. Changes in the structure of the chromosomes are called as a chromosomal mutations. Here, they also bring about variations in the phenotypic of organisms, which lead to the occurrence of the variations in the offspring, just like the gene chromosomes. And the next, gene changes. Next one, genetic recombination. Here, recombination of the genes due to crossing over during meiosis are also responsible for bringing about genetic variations in the individuals of the same species. Here, crossing over occurs in the which stage? Meiosis. Okay, in the meiosis, the crossing over takes place. That means here the genes of the mother and the genes of the father exchanges. So if the exchanges, what happens? Automatically the changes occurs in the genetic variations also occurs in the individuals. And next one, natural selection. It is a common point here. I already explained here. Natural selection does not produce any genetic changes, but once genetic changes occurred, it favors some genetic changes while rejecting others. So here what happens here? Okay, naturally, if any variations occurs in the genes, sometimes here the genetic changes favors to the animals. Some genetic changes cannot favor to the organisms. So those favor the genetic changes favors to the organisms, they can survive. Those genetic changes cannot favor to the organisms, they cannot survive in the environment. Okay. Next one, reproductive isolation. I already said that here, if the species are differentiated or the species are separated by reproduction, that is known as a reproductive isolation. So in such cases, the genes cannot flow between the same species. So the absence of gene exchange, it cannot takes place between the population, is called the reproductive isolation. It plays a great role in giving rise to new species and preserving the species integrity. So these are the 5 principles are present to explain the modern synthetic theory of evolution. Okay, thank you.